Welcome, and from the Jack Morton Auditorium of the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., welcome to the debate among the presidential candidates or their designated surrogates for the presidency of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. I'm Harold Meyerson. I'm the editor-at-large of the American Prospect magazine and an op-ed columnist for the Washington Post, and I am joined tonight by two terrific journalistic colleagues. To my left, Michelle Amber, who is a senior reporter for the BNA Daily Labor Report and Labor Relations Week, and to my right, Ryan Grimm, who is the D.C. Bureau Chief of the Huffington Post. And the candidates of whom we will be asking questions tonight, I'm going to introduce the candidates, then I'm going to go through the rules, and we will, at that point, begin the debate. From my left, we have Ken Hall, candidate for Secretary-Treasurer on Jim Hoffa's slate. Ken Hall joined the Teamsters in 1972. He's a member of Local 175 from Charleston, West Virginia, and is an international vice president at large and heads the Teamsters package division. In the middle, from my left or right, in the middle is Sandy Pope, who joined the Teamsters in 1978. She comes from, she is president of Teamster Local 805 since the year 2004, and she's a candidate for president. 5 years ago, she was a candidate for Secretary-Treasurer of the Teamsters. And the gentleman over here, Fred Giguere, joined the Teamsters in 1970, I said 1977, I may have that backwards.
72.
72, and you joined in 77, right?
76.
76, what the, okay. Fred Giguere, who is president of the Wisconsin Teamsters Joint Council 39, longtime Teamster official and candidate for president of the Teamsters Union. Now, what's going to happen is the candidates have drawn for the opening and closing statements. The opening statements, each candidate is entitled to a 90-second opening statement, and each candidate will be given at the conclusion of the debate 2 minutes for their closing remarks. In between the opening and the closing, the panelists and some members of the audience who've written out questions will be posing questions to the candidates. The candidate who was asked the question gets 90 seconds to answer, and then the other two candidates each get 45 seconds to respond. And I might add, if something, if one of us on the panel feels obliged to follow something up, we're going to do that. So everyone has been warned. And when the candidates have 15 seconds to go until their allotted time, whatever it may be, is up. I'm sorry, tell me your name again. Kaylin. All right, Kaylee will lift the yellow sheet. That means you've got 15 seconds. And the red sheet, which is more of a pink sheet, it means your time is up. I'll let you finish your sentence, but I won't let you finish your paragraph. So that's how that's going to go. So the order that the candidates had picked by lot at the beginning, the opening statements, each candidate gets 90 seconds. The order begins with Fred Giguere will go first, Sandy Pope will go second, Ken Hall will go third. So welcome to you all, and Brother Giguere, you're on.
Thank you, Harold. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank the university for hosting this great debate, but The big problem we have here tonight is that where's Jim Hoffa? I think this past weekend we've seen Jim Hoffa on cable network boasting his power, boasting his unity, boasting himself like he's a fighter. Far thing from the truth. Jim Hoffa has deserted his own membership. Why am I saying that? Because look at his record. He leaves the members on the street that take on corporate America that are fighting for their pension. It happened in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. He's not fighting for the multi-employer pension funds. What's he doing? He's dividing local against local, union against union. This is criminal as far as I'm concerned. He should be up here on this diocese and answering to the membership. He's afraid of the membership. Jim Hoffa does not have a record that he can boast about. He's not organizing in the core industry. He's closing down departments. In 2010, we took in $172 million and spent $212 million. He got caught trying to bribe 3 people that were on my slate, running with me, supporting me, and would have cost the membership over $1 million in dues money. This has to stop. This is not the reputation the Teamsters were born to be known for. This organization is proud, it's militant, but we always were superior in our collective bargaining agreements. Nobody has any use of the Constitution anymore to fight for Article 12, Section 10, where there should be parity in the industry. What's happening with our public sector? Everybody's talking about war on workers. Yeah, there's a war on workers, but there's a war on the membership by Jim Hoffa in this union. And if he disagrees with me, why ain't he here tonight? The membership is hungry for leadership, and he's not providing it.
Okay, Mr. Jaguar, your time.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next the opening statement from Sandy Pope.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to thank the moderator, panelists, guests, and all the Teamster members for the opportunity to talk with you tonight about the future of our union. This election is about choosing our general president for the next 5 years. Ken Hall is not in that race, but Hoffa knows that after 13 years, members have had enough of his empty promises. So he sent Ken here as his stand-in. I feel bad for you, Ken. Defending Hoffa's record, I wouldn't want that job. Over the last 13 years, Teamster members have faced concessions and pension cuts. Hoffa gave concessions to UPS when the company was making record profits. Management dominates the grievance procedure and is walking all over the contract. In the freight industry, Hoffa has driven our union over a cliff. The Central States Pension Fund is on the brink. Corporate America has launched a full-scale attack on working people. Teamsters in every industry are looking for action plans from our international union to help us fight back. We need a general president who will be a field general, not an empty talker-in-chief. I look forward to the opportunity tonight to lay out my vision and my plans for our union. We face tough times, but there's nothing wrong with our union that can't be fixed with what's right with our union.
All right, the third opening statement comes from Ken Hall.
Good evening. I'm Ken Hall, candidate for General Secretary Treasurer on the Hoffa Hall 2011 slate. I'm representing our team in this debate, and you're entitled to know why. If you choose to entrust our team with leadership of this union for another term, you will elect officers who work together to tackle the difficult issues that are confronting all of us. For the past 72 hours, Jim Hoffa has been the target of right-wing forces in the Tea Party and the Republican Party. He has been vilified on Fox News for speaking the truth, but Jim Hoffa won't back down. But I'll be damned if I would support him coming to this debate to have the two of you who have been sitting on the sidelines in this battle for America's workers attacking him, giving our enemies like Fox News and Rush Limbaugh more ammunition. Our members know where he stands because he's been fighting for them every day for the past 12 years. On the picket lines, in Congress, at organizing rallies, and on Wall Street, Jim Hoffa defends our members and fights for them. I'm proud of our record. Even in this economy, we've organized 130,000 new members and used all the resources of this union to protect our members in industries that have been hardest hit during the recession. And I'm going to spend the next hour talking about the plan and vision that the Hoffa Hall slate has for the next 5 years. If my opponents have real proposals or real alternatives to what we've done, let's discuss them. Because all I've heard from them is criticism, not a single plan. There's going to be a union after this campaign is over. Let's see if we can spend the next hour discussing ways to make it better rather than tearing it down.
All right, we have opening statements. Hopefully we got applause out of our system until the closing statements. The first question goes to Sandy Pope, and it comes from me. Fred Jaguar alluded to organizing in core industries in his question and in his opening statement, and some of the partners that the Teamsters have in Change to Win have made a big deal about trying to get a certain level of density in core industries. The Teamsters have something of a reputation for organizing just about anything anywhere. And you've spoken about the Teamsters organizing more strategically. Do you think there's some workers, some industries that Teamsters shouldn't organize, and should there be more focus on just sort of the core industries where Teamster workers work? But are there any workers that Teamsters shouldn't organize?
Probably. But I think that a lot of workers come to the Teamsters anyway to join us because we are the strongest union out there. I think that we do have to focus on core industries, and the way that we do it is by enforcing our contracts in our core industries, which hasn't been happening. Our members are getting shellacked out there, and once that we start to turn our attention to enforcing our contracts at UPS, in freight, at Waste Management, in the grocery industry, then those members will be our best organizers out there, and we'll be able to build. We have lost more jobs than we have gained in organizing because we have not been focused on protecting the jobs that we do have in those industries.
Okay. You each get 45-second responses. Ken Hall, are there some members, some folks out there that Teamsters shouldn't organize? And have the union been focused sufficiently on the Teamsters core industries?
Well, I agree with Sandy. This is the strongest union under Jim Hoffa's leadership. But no, we represent, and we pride ourselves in representing everyone from A to Z, airline workers to zookeepers. And I don't think we're going to change that. But when we talk about the core industry, let's talk about what that is. We organize UPS Freight, which is the largest organizing. That's a core industry for us, in case some folks don't understand that. We organize freight. We have brought we organize CSI with that same company. So it is true that when workers are satisfied, they go out and help us do that. But yes, I mean, we're organizing the core industry every day. I think perhaps Sandy is confused with her local where the membership has actually declined. We've organized 130,000 workers in 3 years, even in this recession.
Okay, time there. Fred Jaguar.
Yeah, we organize anybody from A to Z. Anybody who knocks on our door, we should be organizing them. But the core industry is valuable to the current membership within the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, whether it be in the private sector, the public sector, the rail industry, the airline industry, whatever industry it is, we have to pay attention, because what happens is that if you've seen what happened with deregulation, we've lost a lot of our clout because a lot of our employers went out of business. And in 1980, when it was passed, we got hurt big time. So we have to concentrate on organizing the unorganizing. No excuse. Hoffa has not had a game plan to organize in the core industry since he's been in office, period.
Okay. The next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Ken Hall.
Thanks. When he was challenging Ron Carey for the Teamsters presidency, Jim Hoffa challenged Carey to debate. Since he was elected president, though, this is the third debate, one in 2001, one in 2006, and now tonight, the President Hoffa has ducked. Where is Jim Hoffa, and why isn't he here tonight?
First of all, you're right that Jim Hoffa did challenge Ron Carey, and as I recall, Ron Carey declined to do that. Where Jim Hoffa is tonight is where he needs to be. If anyone has picked up a newspaper or turned on the TV, you would find that he's all over the country fighting for our workers and fighting against these right-wing politicians and folks at Sandy's favorite station, Fox News, to make it clear and to be talking about what's most important to our members. It's about our pensions. It's about our health care. And you know what else? He's been working with folks because right now the number one thing our members need is to have jobs. It's about jobs, jobs, and jobs. And he has advised everyone, including the President of the United States, and that's been some of the ongoing discussions over the past 72 hours, about drawing a line in the sand and stopping negotiating with these Republicans who don't care about working people, and taking a hard line tomorrow night when we talk about jobs. That's where he's at. He's out there doing his job.
Okay, Fred Jaguar, comment on President Hoffa's attendance, non-attendance.
Well, in May of 2010, I sent Hoffa a letter telling him I was going to run against him for the general presidency. And in my letter, I told him that I wanted to debate him in front of each joint council throughout the United States and Canada. He declined. He ran. He didn't want to debate. In the same letter, I asked him to debate me before the delegates at the convention would vote on the candidates for general presidency, general secretary treasurer, and vice presidents. Again, he ran, just like he's running from the membership. He should be here tonight. He's always got an excuse to run from the membership. You can't lead when you hide, and doing nothing is not the answer.
Okay, Sandy Pope.
First, for the record, Hoffa turned down being at this appearance months ago, so he didn't know that this was cooking with Fox. And by the way, with Fox, a lot of our members and a lot of working people watch that news station, and I've been on there defending the unions and defending the Teamsters every time I get the opportunity, and that's where I think we need to be. So he's just chicken. That's all there is to it. He can't do anything that's not prepared.
Our next question comes from Ryan Grimm, and it goes to Fred Jaguar.
So earlier tonight, you criticized President Hoffa for his failure to organize more of the car haul industry. But one of the members of your slate, Fred Zuckerman, has been the director of that since about 2005 or so. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't a lot of the responsibility fall on him as well? And
absolutely, and Fred Zuckerman did a great job with this past agreement, but the truth be told, Hoffa and his outside consultants tried to put roadblocks in front of Fred Zuckerman trying to negotiate a national car haul agreement. And let me explain why. Bob King, the president of the UAW, went with Fred Zuckerman to Japan to protest the outsourcing of the car haul jobs. Fred Zuckerman and Bob King worked hand in hand. Jim Hoffa took that authority away from Fred Zuckerman. Can you imagine a general president saying, you can't talk to the president of the UAW anymore when we're trying to negotiate a master agreement for our car haul members? I mean, we were really down to like 40% in that industry. Fred Zuckerman, because of his tireless efforts, raised that industry back up to over 60-some% working today. And Jim Hoffa tried to put the roadblock in. Go on my website and see Fred Zuckerman's letter to the general president telling him, why are you stopping me from getting help from the UAW so our members can get a good contract and secure them and their dependents with a good agreement? And Hoffa refused to answer him. They wanted him to write out the questions and they would present them to Bob King. Well, I told Freddie you should have booted him in the ass. You don't have to take that. You're there for the membership, not Jim Hoffa. But they played politics with it, and that's wrong. The members deserve better, and that's what I'm going to do when I'm elected general president. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy Pope on car haul, or?
I'm just surprised. Fred has been part of the Hoffa administration for the last 12 years, and now he's suddenly criticizing, and all these things that could have been brought up when they were going on. All these problems in car haul and other core industries have been going on for years. I'm not tied to the Hoffa administration. That's the bottom line. I'm the only candidate that's for real change in this race. If people are happy with what's been going on, then they should vote for one of my opponents.
And Ken Hall on car haul.
Well, I have to agree with Sandy that Fred has voted for every issue and every policy that Jim Hoffa's had up until the last 6 months. But in terms of Fred Zuckerman, I'm held responsible for what happens in UPS, and Fred Zuckerman's held responsible for what happens in car haul, and it's been a dismal failure, as everybody knows. Fred Zuckerman has taken that division and reduced it to half its size. Of course, Fred's the same guy who, with UPS, cut a deal. When we talk about all these 22-3 jobs that you guys like to talk about, he cut a deal to turn 8-hour full-time jobs into 6-hour, the only place in the United States of America. That's how Fred Zuckerman operates, and that's what we'll have if Fred Jaguar's team wins.
During the evening, we're going to take a few questions from the folks in the room as well. And the first of those comes from Dennis Taylor of Teamster Local 355, and it's a question to Sandy Pope, I believe.
This question is for Sandy Pope. Sandy, you have been accused of losing assets and watching your pension plan go downhill since you become the principal officer of your local union. Is it true, isn't it true, your pension is in the critical zone and that a majority of your members lost early retirement benefits?
It's true that my pension is in the critical zone, like many of the pensions in the Teamsters, including the Central States Fund. My members, I fought hard to maintain the early retirement, and what I did was I got an agreement with the employer trustees that if you were within 5 years of retiring, that you would still keep your 25 and out benefit. And I have since bargained record increases for our pension fund with a blank check each year from my biggest employer.
Okay. Ken Hall, you want to respond to that?
Well, first of all, let's make sure the record's clear. This agreement that you reached meant that about 40 members out of 500 and some were protected with their 25 and 30 and out benefits. The rest lost their benefits. And, you know, it's just more of the same of nobody, you two don't want to take a responsibility for anything. I have a pension fund that's 3 times your size, and it's in the green zone. It's been in the green zone, and that's the kind of financial leadership that you're going to find with the Hoffa Hall team, as opposed to the dismal record of both of our opponents here tonight concerning pension.
And Fred Jaguar.
Well, you know, I'm not a follower of Sandy's pension fund and her local union. I run one of the biggest multi-employer funds in the country, Central States, and Ken Hall at UPS out of Central States pension fund with Jim Hoffa, but he didn't let UPS out of his fund. That's why he's boasting about it being in a green zone. I lost 40% of my revenue because I lost 45,000 participants. And I've had since that date, 192 since April of 08 have left Central States pension fund because of their action. So if they're going to take shots across the bow, get your facts straight. People are out there suffering and they're hurting. And it's not even funny because they work their whole lives for their pension. And when Hoffa leaves them on the street fighting for their pension, it's a dirty shame.
Next question comes from Ryan, and it goes to Sandy Pope.
Sure. Sandy, you said in a recent interview that if elected, you would lease out the Teamster building here in Washington. Could you elaborate on that? What's the strategy?
I didn't exactly say that. I said that I felt that we should spend a lot more time out in the field and out of Washington, and that's what I believe. The minute that I get elected, I'm going to set up Teamster Power tours. We're going to go out there and we're going to set up conferences and meetings with the members to hear what they have to say and get their ideas with the local officers all around the country. The president of this union should be out in the field with the members, because if Hoffa had been out there, he'd be hearing how upset people are at UPS and in freight and in waste and in grocery industry and all across and the public employees out there. He's out there making speeches, while what we have to do is listen and bring people together, bring the locals together to fight against our common enemies, which are the corporations right now that are just greedy beyond belief, and they're trying to bring us to our knees. And we really have to fight. But we can't do it if we don't organize the members, if we don't listen, if we don't involve them. They are totally alienated right now from the union. We've got to get them involved to fight back effectively.
Let's do a follow with Fred Jaguar. Is the union too centralized and too big here in Washington? Does it need to redeploy some resources elsewhere?
Absolutely. You got to give more authority to the local unions and the joint councils. This union is in real trouble because it's being ran from the top down. I've told Hoffa that. Ken Hall's witnessed this at board meetings where I says, you can't run this union from the top down. You got to run this union from the bottom up. You have to activate the rank and file. That's what the Teamsters are all about. We need more clout on the local levels. Right now, what's happening with the International is that they send in one of these consultants into a joint council or a local union, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, you imagine one of those people coming into my local union or my joint council? It won't be nice, because we have the experience because we're hitting the ground running with the membership. They don't get it, though. Hoffa's gone all the time.
Okay, Ken Hall, what about concentration of resources here in D.C. and use of resources out in the field?
Well, it's just outrageous to talk about leasing out the IBT. We're here at the center of power in the entire country. But given what I've seen of Sandy's LM2s, she has lost over 83% of her assets from her local union. So she may very well be looking at leasing out the IBT. When Fred talks about top-down, I don't know what he's talking about. And yes, I heard him say that after he decided to run for president. But he knows the same as I do. I've been in a union for 35 years. I believe it's bottom-up. But Fred didn't complain about that for all the years he's been on the board until he decided to run for general president. And last but not least, Fred, please stop calling Central States your fund. I lost 40% of my revenues. You lost 40% of our members' revenues. And by the way, that plan was in a red to start with.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Ken Hall, and it comes from me. Teamster mechanics at United Airlines relatively recently rejected the contract that the Teamster bargainers had bargained with the company. Why did that happen, and does that confirm the contention of the other two candidates here tonight that the Hoffa administration has been conceding too much in bargaining generally with UPS and other companies?
Well, first of all, we lost that election. There's 14,000 people involved in that election, and we lost by 300. And the real reason we lost is because the two opponents, who were both running a TDU campaign, put literature out that the machine is used to go after us.
No, I understand that, but before that, in June, a unit you already had at United Airlines, the mechanics, voted down a contract that had been negotiated and been proposed. So the question is, is that reflective of some failure on the part of the Hoffa administration, and does it reflect a broader discontent with the contracts the union's been getting over the last several years?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's always possible to have a contract that's not ratified. That's happened for as many years as I've been here. I mean, there's been times when the national contracts, both freight and UPS, have been rejected. We have one of the highest percentages of ratification. For example, at UPS Freight, that I hear a lot of criticism from our opponents, that group they ratified it by 92%. So there was an issue that perhaps there was some difference of opinion as to what the priority was, and it's something that we'll go back and address. But it's not something out of the ordinary for a contract to get turned down.
Okay. Sandy Pope, want to respond?
Oh, this is part of a pattern in the international where major corporations that are making a ton of money are given concessions. And the United Airlines mechanics voted down that contract because they were going to have to give up health benefits in it. And the international went around and they tried to push that contract down people's throats, and they voted no. And by the way, on the other vote in the airline division, that had to do with the fact that this union agreed to subcontracting in the contract. Has nothing to do with anybody's campaign literature.
Okay, and Fred Jaguar, response.
Well, I've been negotiating contracts for 35 years. I wear several hats for the Teamsters, and you know, when you get into ratifications, you know, it all involves like how the offer is presented. What are the issues that are on the table that are pro and con? So for me to play armchair quarterback with regards to what they were thinking when they voted it down, I'd have to speak to the membership or be at the membership meeting, because you know, each local union has its own autonomy when they ratify a contract, and they should be presenting those offers to their membership and in writing so they understand what they're voting on. But for me to say, well, they should have got this or they should have got that, that's not fair to say to that local union.
Okay. Next question comes from Michelle Amber for Fred Jaguar.
Your campaign wasn't able to get enough support to put you on the ballot in all the various regions. Can you explain why you were unable to obtain the required number of signatures, and are you really running a national campaign?
Yeah, number one, I'm running a national campaign. I'm very pleased with it. The Jaguar Shear team is out there with a very diversified slate, the most diversified slate since the longevity of the Teamsters. And it was a miscalculation. I didn't think the election supervisor was going to disqualify all my petitions on the West Coast that Lucio Reyes had collected, who was running with me as a vice president of the Western region. And they disqualified those petitions. And we didn't send them in. We should have sent more petitions in. Call it hindsight, but hey, everybody knows me around the country. The energy is there. The membership is involved. We're getting a lot of support out there. The members are upset, and they want this election to be about them, the issues, and what this international is going to do for the membership. No more glossy photos. No more cable network TV. They want this international to be ran from the bottom up. So the election officer threw us a curveball as far as I'm concerned. Hey, I lived with it. I didn't appeal it. I accept the decision. So I got to live with it. Okay. Thank you.
Any Ken Hall response?
The last time I checked, it's not about petitions as to whether you field a slate. You must get delegates at the convention. And the issue is Fred couldn't get the delegates at the convention to field a full slate. I've listened to this about what kind of campaign he's run. I've always had a great deal of respect for Fred until he got into this race. And now the accusations that's coming out. I mean, he posts everything that in his campaign and claims to, last week he claimed to lead the 97 UPS strike. So I don't know what's going on, but I think we should talk about the truth. And the truth is he couldn't get the delegates at the convention.
Okay. Comment from Sandy Pope.
Well, the truth is that you need a national organization to run successfully, and that's what I had. And I got 50,000 votes, or sorry, signatures, which is even more than what was required. And I've been out there in the field the entire time. As every weekend of the year, I've been out campaigning, and that's what's necessary to win here. Is the national organization of volunteers that we have. We have Teamster members all around the country and in Canada and in Puerto Rico who are committed because they are sick and tired with the direction and they want to see a new direction in this union.
Okay, let's take another question from one of the Teamsters here in the hall tonight. This second question would come from Rich Bauer, who's from Teamster Local 697. And it goes to Ken Hall.
Yes, Ken, my question is, President Hoffa's own number 2 man, Tom Keegle's retiring this year. And in a public letter, he criticized the campaign violations by the Hoffa administration and the use of outsiders to run our union. Do you support his comments on that? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
I'm not sure whose comments he's asking.
Tom Keegle, he said.
Well, first of all, let's be clear about one thing. Tom Keegle I have more respect for Tom Keegle than almost anyone in this organization. He's been the greatest General Secretary Treasurer of my lifetime. And what I will tell you is, I'm not going to speak for Tom, but I am going to tell you that contrary to what you're implying in your question, at our international convention, Tom Keegle came to the Hoffa Hall fundraiser, and he came to that fundraiser and spoke to the Hoffa Hall supporters. So I believe that any implication that you've made here, Rick, is a little misplaced.
Okay. Comment from Sandy Pope about the Tom Keegle?
I've grown to respect Tom Keegle a lot over the years, even though we've been on different sides in most things. And I don't believe that Tom would put something out like that if he hadn't really thought about it and didn't really feel it. And that was that Hoffa was leading this union in the wrong direction. And maybe one of the main reasons was because of what happened with Central States, which was letting UPS pull out of Central States, which has left it devastated and caused YRC to go on the brink. So I think that Tom knew what he was talking about, but has backed off.
Okay, and Fred Jaguar.
The truth of the matter is that they're talking about the Keegle July 2010 letter to the General Executive Board, where Keegle talks about outsiders coming in and running the International Brotherhood Teamsters Union. He talks about how the election process is going. And what brought this all on was that Hoffa backdoored Kegel, went behind his back, cashed in the scholarship fund, the strike and defense fund, and a general fund. He cashed it in on the worst days of the market, March 6th of 2009. By the end of 2009, guess what Hoffa lost? Over $30 million he lost in revenue. What does that mean to the membership? A one-time assessment to every member in this great international union of $23 to $24 to make up for Hoffa's screw-up. That's what Kegel's upset about. That's why Kegel dumped him.
Okay. Next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Sandy Pope.
In his acceptance speech, President Hoffa said that neither of his challengers spoke up at the convention, nor did they submit any resolutions or amendments. Can you explain why you didn't take the opportunity to show the delegates what policies you stand for?
Are you done? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a couple of reasons. The last convention, I was booed and yelled at every time I got up at the mic, which was fine. I still was able to speak, but it was really pretty ridiculous and disrespectful. This time I was prepared for it, and I did get up at the mic, only I was blocked by a very large person who kept me from getting to the mic. And then at the next time I got up, I was followed around by somebody who was getting ready to pounce on me to attack me as soon as I got up there. It soon became clear that this convention was going to be nothing but a dog and pony show, which is what it was. And so submitting resolutions, we tried that the last time and the time before, and they were all dismissed by the committees that are all picked by Hoffa. So the whole thing is very controlled. So I decided that my campaign is going to take it to the streets, to take it to the members, and on Facebook and email and every other way that we can get that campaign out there. I just went there to get nominated, and that's what I did.
Response from Ken Hall. Do you know if Sandy Pope was blocked from getting to the microphone?
Absolutely not. Sandy, and the decision was made, quite frankly. Do not boo Sandy Pope, because that's what she wants. She likes to talk about what happened 5 years ago, and we knew that that was what she would come expecting, and it was very clear. To suggest that she was blocked from making amendments or constitutional changes is just ridiculous. And if I felt that way, I certainly wouldn't be in this race. But the fact is that neither of our opponents got on the floor, and I'm sure that Fred, as tough a guy as he is not going to say that he was intimidated from getting on the floor. Neither side made one constitutional amendment or resolution at the convention.
Okay, Fred Jaguar on the convention.
Well, the convention was a dog and pony show. It was a big party for Jim Hoffa at the expense of the membership's dues money. Let's face it, at the Constitution Committee where we had a meeting, myself and Fred Zuckerman and Brad Sloss and Henry Perry, who all sat on the Constitution Committee, we wanted to reduce the amount of time you have to wait for strike benefits from 10 days to 5 days. And we got shot down. So we made up our mind, let's go get nominated, because all it was a Hoffa party. I mean, I never seen so many acolytes that were wrong about Hoffa bringing in the movie stars. Let's talk about the issues. We didn't talk about waste management people losing their pension in Milwaukee getting screwed. We didn't talk about how people were left on the street when they asked for help. None of that was discussed. And they say, well, bring up resolutions. Thank you.
Okay. Next question comes from Ryan Grimm, and it goes to Ken Hall.
So you've spoken tonight about one of the Teamsters' greatest victories, the UPS contract in the 90s, which created thousands of full-time middle-class jobs. But the most recent UPS contract, in order for UPS to be able to represent freight workers, one of the concessions was that there would be part-time work allowed. So it gets to the question of what is the union good for? If a union job is part-time, close to the minimum wage without health care benefits, what is a union job?
Well, I'm not sure which contract you're talking about, because the contract that we negotiated in 1997 with the strike we got a settlement of $4.7 billion. In 2002, under Jim Hoffa's leadership, with the same negotiator, we got $9.6 billion. Part-time employees do have both health insurance and pension benefits, which is under that contract, which is very, very rare. And what it's good for is a contract that for every full-time employee who goes out on the road beginning next year, they'll be making $48.58 an hour in wages, health care, and pensions. That's what a union's worth to those people.
Fred Jaguar?
Well, Kenny may be right on his facts in that, but the problem you have out there is that there's so much disgruntled workers within these hubs and these drivers that I've met throughout the country, talking to them, looking at them, the standards that they're forced to work under, and they're saying, for what? We get no respect, our grievances are not being processed, nobody's listening to us. Do you know they have a mountain of grievances like this Atlantic grievance procedure with regards to the agenda that they transfer 3 to 4 to 100 grievances month to month? Nobody's representing the members. One of the things I tell the members out there is that, let me make it clear. What I see on those grievance procedures and why members talk about their jobs and their grievances are not being processed is that you got too big of a cozy relationship with the panel members and UPS management.
Okay. And Sandy Pope on the UPS contract.
1997, Ron Carey was the president that was in charge then, and I worked in his administration, and we were committed to getting full-time jobs. And I believe that you said that Hoffa is out there fighting for full-time jobs and the economy and everything. When he's looked on the other way with UPS, UPS hasn't hired a full-timer in 5 years practically. The part-timers, they are happy with what little they're getting, but they want full-time jobs too. They're waiting again 10, 11, 12 years for full-time jobs. You've completely given up on the 22-3 jobs as well.
Okay. Next question comes from me, and it goes to Fred Jaguar. The Teamsters are still dues-paying members to the Change to Win Federation, which just is down at this point to 4 unions. At this point, what is the point of Change to Win, and does it even make sense to have 2 separate labor federations? And if you were president of the Teamsters, what would you do about that?
Well, I believe in a unified labor movement, but on Change to Win, we left the AFL-CIO and we formed the Change. We were one of the unions that went in with other labor organizations to form the Change to Win. And it's a unified body, but the problem we had, if you look at it, Harold, was that we were paying for duplicate services. We're not doing that today. You know, we have a voice at the table. The other unions that are part of Change to Win, they're working with us on common problems. I think Change to Win is out there with regards to letting the public know and letting their voice be known, is that they do have rights with regards to this organization and getting involved with it. So Change to Win to me and the other unions seem to be working. And I wish they would be a little bit more militant, though, with regards to getting a message out there on the attack of workers with regards to the public sector. Because the public sector has taken a shellacking in a lot of these states. Like in my state, Change to Win was very successful. In Wisconsin, we were ground zero. We see what Governor Walker did to the collective bargaining with regards to the state of Wisconsin and the public sector. So we're working hard. We're working with the other entities within Change to Win. We work with the other entities within the AFL-CIO. But we elected to go into the Change to Win, and that's where we are today.
Sandy Pope, Teamsters should still belong to Change to Win?
I don't think it helps us to be separated. I think we should all be together. I'm not sure about, I wasn't involved in why people left, and in fact I was pretty upset that local officers weren't consulted about leaving the AFL-CIO at all. And, but we desperately need unity today. We need to have solidarity in the entire labor movement. We all need to be working together, whether we're in 2 separate organizations or not. So I hope that we will make the effort to everybody to get back together.
And Ken Hall on Change to Win.
Change to Win, I mean, one of the issues is that the AFL-CIO provides a lot of benefits for smaller unions where the Teamsters have our own internal departments and don't really need that assistance. And so we pay, quite frankly, a lot less of our members' dues money into Change to Win, while at the same time we're working together on political issues and other issues. But I just have to follow up. Sandy's comment that UPS hadn't hired a full-time employee in 5 or 6 years. I know you've never represented an employee. I don't know where you came up with the 97 strike because you weren't there, I was. But it shows how little you know. They've hired thousands of full-time drivers in the last 5 years.
Okay, I want to clarify that members are free to use their time also to respond to previous comments, but it doesn't add to your time, nor did that, but you are free to do that. Let's take another question from one of the Teamsters in the hall. This one comes from Dennis Stout of Local 135, and I think it goes to Fred Jaguar.
Good evening. Fred, you were the chairman of Central States Pension Fund, but you said nothing when Hoffa pulled out of the Central States and destroyed the fund. You even seconded Hoffa's nomination in 2006 when Central States and UPS sellouts were already in the works. Why didn't you say anything when it counted? And how can you possibly win this election after the Central States disaster happened on your watch? Thank you.
You're welcome. First of all, you got your facts all wrong. I did second Hoffa's nomination in 06 because in 06 I did not know that him and Ken Hall cut a deal with UPS management when they got card check, if you recall, at the convention to bring in 12,000 non-union drivers into the Teamsters where we could not organize in the past. So they cut this deal, and now you got to remember this. Move fast forward. April 07, I get dispatched to Detroit, and all of a sudden there's Hoffa, Hall, Kegel, UPS management is outside. It goes, what the hell's going on here at this meeting? Oh, UPS wants to propose to get out of Central States. I was telling them to go to hell. There's no. They're going to put a DVD out on me, Hoffa says. I said, then put 2 out on them. Oh, no. They're going to get out, and that's it. The withdrawal liability is getting too high. I said, let me take you down memory lane, Hoffa. This institution has paid $42 billion in benefits. Your father developed this plan, like all other plans around the country. You do this, you're destroying everything your father built. The deal was cut. The deal was cut, and guess what? They never put overnight in a Teamster multi-employer fund. Those members are in a health and welfare fund. They cut the deal before the convention. Why do you think UPS gave them the 12,000 members of overnight? And what other deal did they get this past convention? Ken Hall gets up there and he starts talking about him and Hoffa. We got the right to organize 1,000 clericals at overnight. What price did we pay now? Who's going to get dispatched next year that we lost something?
Response from Ken Hall.
First of all, Fred, it's something you don't understand. It's called leverage. And secondly, let's tell the story. When UPS was pulled out of Central States, first of all, Central States, your representatives, and some good people who tried to work through this problem and prevent that. You didn't show up. When you showed up, it was way down the process. But let's be clear. They negotiated, Central States got $6.1 billion plus another $1.5 billion in transfer of liabilities. They got $7.5 billion. Had you hit the numbers that you told us you would hit, that fund would have been fully funded in 2028 because we were concerned about what the other participants going to do. We didn't want to leave them behind, and that's what we did. Unfortunately, you lost the entire $6 billion the next year. But more importantly, I'll finish.
Okay. Well, you guys can get back to this as you see fit in further when you have more time from other questions. Sandy Pope, response.
Fred, you didn't answer the question. Why didn't you say something when it was happening to everybody else when Hoffa wouldn't listen to you? This has to be one of the biggest mistakes ever made in this union. It has caused so many problems everywhere else. Everybody knows that is involved in pension funds that you have to have young blood. You have to have new people coming in to keep a pension fund going. Withdrawal liability isn't enough. Tom Nyhan, the director of the fund, said so to people, and I was one of the only people and other people in my camp that were raising this issue and concerned about it. And now look at what's happened to YRC and hundreds of other companies that are just going to break under the withdrawal liability.
Okay, next question comes from me, and it goes to Sandy Pope. About 40% of the union members in the United States are female, and that's a percentage that's been rising steadily over the decades. Would there be any special significance if you become Teamster president, and would that actually help Teamster image and increase Teamster membership among female workers? Do you think that'd make a difference?
I think so. I am very proud of the fact that that I'm running and that I've been getting the support that I have, both from men and women in the union. And a lot of the women in the union are very excited about that idea. And I've been working for a long time to help women move ahead and get involved. Unfortunately, our union has not been so great at moving women up. We only have a handful of women as principal officers, and the Hoffa slate only has one woman out of the, I believe, 26 people on the slate. So I think it will be great, and I'm very excited about it. But I think mostly people really want to see a fighting president, and it's not as important that I'm a woman running in this race.
Okay, Ken Hall.
I have no issue with gender. I think that this is not about, I would be perfectly fine to have a woman leading the Teamsters Union if that woman was the most qualified person. I mean, I've demonstrated that in the package division. We have more women in leadership positions than anywhere in the union. But I would point out that while the Hoffa slate has one woman on her slate, Sandy doesn't have any women on her slate, or any men. But I would...
And that's because Sandy doesn't have a slate. Is that correct?
Sandy doesn't have anybody running with her. But I do have to step back and say, I resent the fact that someone who has bankrupted their own pension plan, bankrupted their own health care plan, is now giving me advice. My plan's in the green, Sandy. So, but I've listened to you. Never take a position, and I would say to both of our opponents, you've both described pulling UPS out of Central States as the biggest disaster in the union. Stand up in front of these people tonight and take a position and tell them, if you are elected, are you going to put them back in Central States, in the South and the Central? Take a position on one issue.
Fred Jaguar, you can respond to the original question, or if you wish, you can also respond to what Ken Hall just said.
Well, first of all, I have no problem with gender, and I have more women on my slate than the history of the executive board of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. But I don't support Sandy's candidacy, for the record, so everybody understands that. But on the pension issue, getting back to Central States, you know, a lot of people don't realize is that I oppose this very, very vigorously. They're putting on a dog and pony show now because it's campaign mold. But you got to remember something. The trustees don't have a seat at the bargaining table. Ken Hall and Jim Hoffa negotiated that contract. They cut the deal to take those members out of Central States, period. And Jim Hall wanted us to take $4 billion, and I told him to go to hell. Because Jim Hoffa says, you're stopping me from getting a Gatorade poured on my head and getting carried off the field. Okay. Well, my time's up.
Okay. Next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Ken Hall.
Delegates to your last convention adopted a resolution expressing their desire that the 1989 consent decree with the federal government be ended. What, if anything, are the current officers doing to try to end the trusteeship?
Well, the current officers of our union has been for some time having some dialogue with the government. We obviously want to be out from under the consent decree. I don't think that any of our opponents here tonight would disagree with me when I say that we don't have corruption issues in our union. Our union is probably cleaner than any union, and certainly cleaner than most Wall Street institutions. The problem is that we want an agreement that's reasonable, that's not going to put such restraints on the union that it turns us into, we're more than happy to police our union, but we don't want to be put in a position where it's just unreasonable and outrageously expensive plan that the government wants. We need something that's reasonable.
Okay, Sandy Pope?
I think we have to show that we can police ourselves, and I don't think that the union has shown that they can do that. We continue to have issues with locals. It may not be at the same level that it was before, but it continues to happen. Ever since Ed Steer was fired by Hoffa, I don't know the reason or anything like that, except for that he wanted to investigate in Chicago. And so I haven't seen anything happening since then, no concerted effort to get rid of the IRB.
And Fred Giguere.
As everybody knows by now, I filed a lawsuit with 50 members getting rid of the IRB out of our union for the sheer fact is that it's become a menace to our membership. $147 million they have taken out of our treasury. $13 million was taken out during the Steer administration for Project Rise. $7 million was taken out for special investigations. When is the IRB going to fess up to our membership and say, enough's enough? We ought to be policing ourselves with our own ethics panel. This is criminal, legalized criminality, stealing money out of our members' treasuries. There's no more mob. Give me a break.
Okay, time. All right, the next question comes from Ryan Grimm, and it goes to Fred Giguere.
I want to follow up again on Central States and ask a version of the question that Ken Hall had raised. We've talked about how much of a disaster the original decision was, but what would you do going forward?
Oh, what I'm doing is we're doing the different proposals to the PBGC, like the different amendments we're asking for to get rid of orphans for current employers that pay off their withdrawal liability, but they don't have accumulation of more withdrawal liability in the future. But I would have never taken them out of Central States, first of all. You got to go down memory lane about Central States. It was an institution that gave UPSers back in 1965 10 years of past credited service with 10 years of contributory credited service, and they gave them a 20-year pension. We need participants in our fund. What Hoff and Hall did to Central States and putting everybody in harm's way, today, because of their actions, we have 4.1 retired for everyone working. The longevity of Central States is until June of 24. That is the projection. We cannot continue to go down this path. Because of the Hall and Hoffa's stupidity and dumb decisions and what they did in cutting the deal with UPS behind everybody's back at the 06 convention that nobody knew about, this is what happened. I have lost 192 more employers got out of Central States Pension Fund because they let UPS out. And I'm telling you, I don't know how long this longevity is going to go. We're obligated to pay. The time's up.
Okay. Response from Ken Hall.
Should I wait till he answers that question? The question is, to both of our opponents who constantly criticize but never have an answer, I'm waiting to hear if this was the biggest decision or biggest disaster in the union, are you going to tell the people tonight you'll put those UPSers back in Central States? I'm waiting to hear that answer. But before that, let's once again be clear. Fred Giguere, who today says he was totally against it, not only is that not true, Fred Giguere met with UPS before there was an agreement with UPS at the bargaining table because we stopped negotiations and let them meet. They reached their agreement. Fred reached an agreement and signed it, letting them out 8 months early because they had an agreement that I couldn't have gotten them out of. And the truth is, Fred, you voted for it. Every contract has to be voted by the GEB and a national contract to be sent out, and you voted for it.
And response from Sandy Pope.
I believe in asking the members what they want to do. And if the members in the South and the Central don't want to go back into Central States after being informed, then we're not going to do it. But the point is that we need to find ways to rebuild our pension plans. We have to focus on that and make a huge commitment to doing that, not just Central States, but all of them. I understand that the New England pension plan has been working on new ways to bring new companies in, and that's the sort of thing that we have to keep on doing.
Okay, now the next question comes from Ryan Grimm, and it goes to Sandy Pope.
Right. Sandy, you've been critical of the Hoff administration for its failure to organize FedEx, but doesn't a lot of that have to do with federal law? And what would you have done differently were you president over the last 5 years to organize FedEx?
Oh, FedEx, we had started building a list of FedEx workers years ago, and I'm not saying it would have been easy to organize them, but we definitely had to have an ongoing campaign and a more focused effort on organizing in our core industries. It's critical. Yes, we have to, I believe in working on legislation through having members lobbying, through mobilizing our members, educating them, not paying lobbyists to go to Washington and deal with these issues. We need to have our own people out there demanding these things and reaching out to FedEx workers. We can organize without the law for a while. You don't need to have, you can start building a union at FedEx before you change this law.
Response on FedEx from Ken Hall.
Well, Sandy, if you have that list you've had from years ago, I wish you'd share it with us. But the legislation, I've been there at every step. So the legislation that you're talking about, you know that we have to change the law. We lacked 5 Republican votes to be able to change that law to take them from under the Railway Labor Act over the past year. And we worked tirelessly to do that. While you, Sandy, in your local, have you and one other member who participates in our political action fund. And Fred, yours is the lowest joint council participation in the entire country. We are working to organize FedEx. We have launched a FedEx Freight campaign in the West. Once again, it's people who say, I don't like your idea, but they don't have one. And let me say, Sandy, that is the biggest lack of leadership with your answer. We'll ask the members if they want to go back. Did you ask your members if they wanted you to cut their benefits?
Okay, time there. And response from Fred Jaguar on FedEx.
I agree with regards to taking on FedEx, but getting back to the pension issue, Ken Hall lied to this body here tonight, saying that I met with UPS and I supported allowing UPS out of Central States. Furthest thing from the truth. Like I told the young man that came up there and asked me the question, why I didn't do anything in 06. Remember, go back now, I says, April of 07, I was dispatched, that deal was cut. I didn't invite UPS to that meeting, Hoffa and Hall did. I had to bring Tom Nyhan, my executive director, and my actuary to that meeting because they already had the deal cut. How can I meet with UPS when I don't even negotiate their contract? It was a done deal by Hoffa and Hall.
Okay, time. And the next question comes from me, and it goes to Ken Hall. This is a multi-part question. If the consent decree were lifted, would you continue to have members elect the Teamsters national officers, or would you revert to having the convention elect them, as it did before the decree? And, as I said, it's multi-part. If you continue to have the members vote, would you continue to keep the current threshold of 5% support from convention delegates as a precondition for running for national office, or would you raise it? And would you try to retain the position of the independent election officer?
Frankly,
I can repeat those as we go if needs be.
I'm going to try to take them one at a time.
Okay.
Let me be very clear. First and foremost, I would continue to support a direct election by membership. We are the most democratic union in the country, and we're going to continue to be that. In terms of the, if we looked at what the threshold was, and I think we should look at what is a normal threshold, what do we look at for other unions, what is any other union that's under those same conditions, and do whatever is the average. Is 5% pretty low? Yes. We've demonstrated over the years that people who can't muster much more than 5% have not been very effective in trying to win election, and it costs our organization $10 to $12 million for somebody just to decide to run when they don't have any ground support to begin with. So that would be something I would consider, but clearly we are always going to have a democratic vote by our members.
Fred Jaguar on member voting and threshold of convention support.
Yeah, I believe in members' participation in voting, but we have to look at this whole structure. What's happening in this election, if you see what's happening, we're paying $320,000 a month to the election officer to conduct an open, honest, and fair election for our membership. And as far as I'm concerned, when Ken Hall, Jim Hoffa, Tyson Johnson, and Roma Lois all tried to bribe people off of my ticket and conspired to steal $1 million of the membership's dues money, and then the election officer puts out a ruling after the 8-month investigation. There was corruption, there was misleading statements, there was not truthfulness. They tried to disrupt the investigation, and all they said to these people was that cease and desist. Give me a break. This ain't an open, honest, fair election.
Okay. Sandy Pope on member voting on delegate threshold of conventions and election officer.
I'm the only person here who's been consistently fighting for the right to, for the rank and file to elect directly the officers. And I would say that when I got 50,000 signatures out of the 300,000 people that voted the last time, 1/6 of the people signed petitions for me. 100,000 people voted for me in the last election out of 300,000. So no, I don't think that that's a low threshold, too low of a threshold at all. And what's important here is accountability, and for the members to feel that they can, that the elected officers are accountable to them. And that's why we need to continue with the same threshold and with the supervision until we can show we can police ourselves.
Next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Fred Jaguar.
In your campaign literature, you've been calling for a more militant union as well as organizing more in core industries. Do you think the union strike fund and its organizing budget need to be enlarged? And if so, how would you do that since you support freezing members' dues?
By organizing more members, more dues paying members. The more revenue you bring in, the more per capita, 22%. Yeah, I believe in organizing in the core industry. You have to understand the big picture here, what's going on in our building in Washington here. Construction is a lame duck right now. Public sector is a lame duck right now. They're basically not getting anything done. There's no uniformity in communications. You don't see any conferences being held with people making them be accountable towards Article 12, Section 10 of the Constitution, where you keep parity. Right now you got members fighting against other local unions, scratch that, local unions fighting against other local unions for jurisdiction. We don't have any leadership. We got to have these divisions fully funded, fully staffed, and supporting and assisting the local unions. Because I don't believe in a dues increase. And I'm not going to raise the membership's dues because of the sheer fact is that you have to learn to give more autonomy to the local union and the joint councils. And you have to look at the revenue you got to deal with. Remember, Hoffa collected $172 million in 2010, spent $212 million. And I think he mismanaged our fund. He put us in harm's way, and it's a matter of public record. Go on to the Department of Labor's website. You'll see our expenditures for 2010. And that's because you're bringing in so many outsiders. We don't need these outsiders. Your best bang for the buck is the member.
Okay. Sandy Pope on increasing strike funds and organizing funds and levels of dues.
I've been accused of losing the assets of my local. I didn't lose those assets. I spent them on organizing one of the biggest food warehouses in our area that was in competition. And if we had a warehouse division that had more than 2 staff people for the biggest division in the union, if we had coordination between the locals, and if we had organizing funds, whether it's co-ops between locals, we would have been able to tackle that as a group. Instead, my local was forced to spend this money on my own. And then the second time we were promised money, and then suddenly the organizing department ran out of money and staff to help us after we stuck our necks out on organizing. That's not how it should go. We need to turn that around and help the local unions and coordinate for organizing and enforcing the contracts.
Response from Ken Hall.
Sandy, the record reflects you had $2.1 million in 2005. By 2010, you had $300,000, and it's still sinking. To suggest that you used all that in an organizing campaign is ludicrous. And by the way, here's a letter signed by you on January 29, 2008 to the General President thanking him for all the work that the IBT did in assisting you in those organizing campaigns. So I guess you are also having some memory problems. And I want to be clear about the public sector, Fred. You've got to be kidding me. Jim Hoffa came to Wisconsin in ground zero when you were in Florida and in Southern California campaigning. You came back and finally campaigned in Wisconsin and got busted by the election officer for using Fred Giguere signs at that campaign. You didn't spend a penny of your money, your PAC money in Wisconsin, on this rerun election for our own members.
Okay. The next question comes from Michelle Amber, and it goes to Sandy Pope.
Your local has just over 1,000 members. The International Union has 1.3 million. Do you have the kind of experience leading a major organization that you need as president of the Teamsters?
Absolutely. The head of this union needs to be the chief bargainer, the chief field operative, the person who is leading with a vision, with a strategy for how we're going to fight back, how we're going to deal with companies like UPS that are tearing our members apart, how we're going to fight production standards, how we're going to organize new members. I have done every single one of those things. I have organized, I have bargained contracts with major corporations. I fought Mayor Bloomberg and won. Not too many union leaders can say that. So there's a lot of things that I have done. That's the type of leadership we need as general president. I don't have to be the chief administrator. That's what Ken Hall and other people are going to be doing. I'm the one that's got to lead the way for how we're going to rebuild the Teamsters Union and lead the rest of the labor movement.
Response from Fred Giguere.
What was the question again?
The question was about whether Sandy Pope's experience heading a local of a little over 1,000 people was adequate for, you know, as experience for heading the international.
I don't agree with that. I don't think Sandy's ready for prime time. No disrespect to Sandy, for the sheer fact is that, look at my resume. That's why I'm running. I've never had opposition. I've always been elected to all these posts within the Teamsters organization. You can't take my resume and compare it to Hoffa's or Sandy's. I always tell everybody out there, I says, Hoffa wishes he had my resume. And I'm very proud of it because I've done it very forcefully but with honor when I've represented the membership throughout the United States and Canada. And I got to tell you something is that you got to know what you're doing at the bargaining table, because this day and age, they come after you fast, hard, and they don't care what they do to their employees. And you got to be ready to protect their members, your members.
Okay. And response from Ken Hall.
Fred, you need to check your bio. You've claimed in your magazine to be the principal officer of Local 662. I don't think you are, but Sandy talks about she's going to be the chief bargainer. Well, that's curious to me, because in New Jersey, at a large UPS facility, you told those members I was going to negotiate the UPS contract if you won. And you told the people in Los Angeles, in Local 396, you told those UPS members the same thing, that I was going to negotiate the contract with your supervision. Now, I hear you fired me in Indiana, but I would like to know, it's a big decision, and frankly, I've been thinking about this negotiations for a long time. You can't wait till it's time to negotiate it. Do you have, while you're not willing to take a position on what to do with those members and their pension funds, are you willing to tell us tonight who will be negotiating that contract?
Sure.
We're kind of running out of time, so do you want to take a few seconds just to talk about that contract?
Are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I intend to be at the head of the table. I never said that you were going to be in charge of bargaining, and I am sure that I told people that you're going to be Secretary-Treasurer of the union, likely, which is a very big, very important job in this union. You have a lot of experience, and I expect to have you there involved, because I know that anyone, any local leader or any international officer that's been involved with UPS is going to be asked to be to help in this negotiations, which is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Okay. All right. Question to Ken Hall, and it comes from Ryan Grimm.
Sure. So last fall out in California, the Local 2865, mostly representing TAs and other UC graduate students, overthrew the established board, the executive board, with a very militant message. Now, at the same time out there are about 15,000 clerical workers that have recently affiliated with the Teamsters but don't have a contract yet. Should those clerical workers ally themselves with this more militant executive board, or do you think that they should continue to operate more autonomously?
Well, I think they have their own local union, and our union is, contrary to what you may hear, is bottom up. And so obviously they're going to have the opportunity to form their own strategies, but they are going to be getting assistance, as they are now, from our public employees division that Fred doesn't seem to know where it is now, but one of the places they are is out there working with that union. So that's going to be dictated, quite frankly, by what our members' needs are, and by meeting with those members and determining what their needs are, just as we do all over the country. There's not, we're not a top-down union. We're not going to say to them, this is how you're going to bargain, this is what the results are going to be. We're going to determine that as we are now, as we're building some unity among those members.
Okay, response from Sandy Pope.
I don't think that you care about what the members think on this. Look at what happened with the United Airlines mechanics in California. You split them up into two groups from one local, and by their last name, so that one group is in Northern California, another group is in Southern California, when these people want to be together. But it looks like maybe this was a gift to the different locals. I'm not really sure. But I believe that we really need to talk to the members about what they see as important, and the airline division has a lot of issues like that need to be examined.
Fred Jaguar.
I believe in talking to the members, too, is with regards to getting their suggestions, their ideas, and what do they want. This is their union, not Jim Hoffa's union. But I want to go back to what Ken Hall said earlier about with regards to the public sector and me being out on the West Coast out there, is that we were able to get 2 charter planes to come from the West Coast to support us in our efforts on protesting the anti-union legislation that was in Wisconsin. What did Jim Hoffa do? He knew I was out of town. He jumped into a car, went to Wisconsin for a 2-hour photo op, and he hasn't been back since. Now give me a break. That's not leadership. That's taking advantage of a media stunt.
Okay. Okay, question, and this is actually the final question, and after the response and the 2 responses to the response, we're going to go to closing statement, just in case you think you've been up there forever. Final question comes from me, and it goes to Fred Jaguar. A couple of days ago, President Hoffa was at a rally in Detroit with President Obama, where everyone seemed to be chanting 4 more years. At the same time, the Teamsters have a lawsuit against the Obama administration about Mexican trucks. And the labor movement generally has expressed some level of ambivalence about President Obama, and levels of support as well. So what's your assessment of President Obama, and how much should the Teamsters do in the next election campaign to ensure his reelection?
Well, I think we ought to take a strong stance, because Obama's administration did not get us EFCA, card check. He reopened up the borders in Mexico, letting the trucks come in, take our members' jobs away. And they haven't helped us out with the consent decree. That's why myself and 50 members from around the country filed a lawsuit to get rid of the consent decree. I mean, there have been some things that the Obama administration has worked with us, but we got to start getting something from these politicians. All we're doing is pouring money down the drain, and everybody's at our doorstep. I think the PAC money should be controlled more so by the states. Give the states more juice for the bang of their buck, because they're the ones who know who their congressional leaders are, their Senate leaders are. They're the ones who get the feedback about the president's positions on certain issues and that. But I think that if we continue to go down the path that we're going, I mean, we've had the majority of the Senate and the majority of the House the first 2 years of his administration. What did we get out of it? I mean, we keep going back and forth with all this fighting, and I just think that he's got to deliver and give us something before we commit so much this go-around. We don't know what's going to happen in 2012. We don't know if there's going to be a candidate against Obama in 2012.
You mean in the Democratic?
In a Democratic side.
Okay. Sandy Pope, the Teamsters and President Obama.
The inside the Beltway and professional lobbying approach of the Hoffa administration has totally failed us. And it's very late now to be looking to see what we can do when he's going to be giving, Obama's going to be giving a big speech on jobs tomorrow, and now people are saying there's almost nothing that he can do. 2 years ago, I proposed at a national meeting that we have a march in Washington, that we bring our members down there demanding jobs, the infrastructure spending, demanding support for our pensions. And we were and a lot of officers supported it because our members were clamoring for some action. And we were told to back off by the lobbyists that control our political action department. And no, it's too, it's too soon. We should leave them alone to figure something out. And look at what's happened now.
Okay. And Ken Hall, the Teamsters and President Obama.
And Sandy, you're giving us advice when you have two people participating in our political action fund. And Fred, you want more control of the PACs in the local areas. You have control of your joint council PAC. You have $130,000 in it. Biggest fight in the country was Wisconsin. You didn't give a penny even to a former Teamster who was running for Senate in the re-election. Not a penny. So we can't go there. In terms of Obama, I guess my question to our opponents is, who is your choice? Is it Michelle Bachmann? Is it Mitt Romney, who just came out this week and said part of the problem is these labor unions? The fact is, we need to do what Jim Hoffa is doing right now, and that is talk to the president and say to him, stop negotiating with people who don't care about working people, draw a line in the sand and do the right thing, and let's continue with some of the success like we've gotten just recently with the NLRB decisions.
Okay, we are now moving into our closing statements, and as a result of the drawing of lots or whatever they drew at the before the debate began, the order of statements has Sandy Pope first, Ken Hall second, and Fred Jaguar third. Each candidate can speak for up to 2 minutes, and we begin with Sandy Pope.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we got to debate some of the serious issues facing Teamster members and our union, and I thank you for that opportunity for our members to hear it. Hoffa sent Ken Hall to put a new face on his failed administration, but it was the same old empty talk and excuses. I'm still very disappointed that Jim Hoffa didn't show up, especially because of the critical issues facing our union. Fred Jaguar was a member of the Hoffa administration for 13 years. He went along with Hoffa's disastrous policies, including in the central states. It comes down to this. If you're happy with what's happening in our union, vote for one of my opponents, because I am not about more of the same. I started as a Teamster in 1978 when Teamster power meant something. I cut my teeth on picket lines and organizing drives, and I worked my way up through the ranks. As an international union representative and local union president, I've taken on some of the biggest multinational corporations, bargained strong contracts, and organized the non-union competition, even with a small local. Our small local is small, but we fight big. I also know how to win. I've taken on Mayor Bloomberg. I've taken on CNS Wholesale. I was the first person to get a union contract with CNS Wholesale, the biggest grocery distributor. Now Hoffa's allowed CNS to move thousands of Teamster jobs out that have gone non-union. Our contracts are being gutted with CNS. We had a neutrality agreement that I negotiated that he let expire. So as Teamster General President, I'm going to set our union on a new course, building on our strongest traditions, but making a decisive break with the Hoffa years. If you're a Teamster who believes our union needs a new direction, then I'm asking for your support. Visit my website at sandypope2011.org. Get information and spread the word to Teamster members. This is a grassroots effort. This is the members' effort, and I need your help. So this is about our union and about our future. Thank you.
Thank you. The next closing statement comes from Ken Hall.
Our members have many issues that are important to them, but none are more important than pensions and health care. And after watching this debate tonight, on the one hand, we have a candidate who, according to the records that she has submitted to by herself to the Department of Labor, has bankrupted her local union treasury, bankrupted her pension plan, bankrupted her health care plan, never negotiated a national contract, and has no slate to support her. the question for our members, and when she talks about CNS, she forgot to tell you about Kroger and her and Tom Leadham and how they negotiated that wonderful national contract that within 3 years, 80% of our members were working for subcontractors. So the real question is, do you want someone with that track record to be responsible for protecting your pensions or responsible for protecting your health care? Or do you want them to be the person that's in charge of your strike fund? Because it's that financial mess that got us into the situation before where we had no strike fund. And quite frankly, those who know us best is our own local union members. Sandy's members voted her in office by 66 mere votes last year, and they know her best. On the other hand, we have a slate that's made up of inexperienced candidates who have no strategy, no plan, and no vision for this union. It's led by Fred Giguere, the first chairman in the history of the Central States to slash members' pensions. His running mate, Fred Zuckerman, who Fred plans to put in charge of UPS, cut a deal with UPS to convert 8-hour full-time jobs to 6-hour jobs with reduced pensions. And then, when we tried to help him with these 22-3 jobs, found he didn't file a grievance because he wanted to blame the International more than he wanted to help his members. And Fred's running mate, Brad Slauson, who will be running the freight division, he negotiated a contract with DHL, a company much larger and with much more money than UPS, where the independent contractors who were package drivers made $12 to $14 an hour with no pension benefit and no dependent health care unless they paid for the full amount.
Ken, we're hitting time. Okay. Thank you. And the final closing statement, okay. Okay, the final closing statement comes from Fred Giguere.
Well, I want to thank the panel for their expertise and the questions that you submitted to the panel tonight here. But let's talk about leadership and let's talk about commitment to this organization. Nobody can boast about the Giguere-Scheer slate commitment to this organization. It's the most diversified board that's going to be elected in the history of this organization. But let's go down and talk about the issues here. What we didn't talk about tonight, we didn't have a chance. If you're a UPS worker, why are you losing 90% of your grievances under the Hoffa Hall administration? If you're a UPS worker, are you forcing your agreements under 22.3, 9.5? What is the deal with UPS getting their way all the time with regards to the collective bargaining agreement? And why do the members at UPS, when they go to these grievance panels, get chastised by the union officials that are supposed to be representing them? Under my watch, I'm going to fire all of those people because it ain't right to chew out a member in front of management and downgrade them. The other thing we got to talk about is under my administration is that we're going to organize in the core industry. And the core industry is going to be our top priority. But I'm going to ask for the members' help, not for outside consultants. This is an act of crime that Hoffa is not here. Jim Hoffa's been running from you for years, 12 years, matter of fact. Why ain't here debating the issues and answering the hard questions? I'll tell you why. Jim Hoffa don't have the answers. He listens to outsiders and consultants. Look at Ken Hall's sweat up here tonight. He's sweating so bad that I'm ready to get him a towel. He knows he's in a fight because the members are upset out there. They're mad. And you talk about Kroger with Fred Zuckerman. Talk about how they screwed 600 people at Kroger in Louisville, Kentucky. That's what you should be talking about. Thank you very much. Vote the Giguere-Scheer slate. Thank you.
And I want to thank my fellow panelists, Michelle Amber, Ryan Grimm. I want to remind everyone watching this that the ballots are going to be mailed out on October 6th. It's your union. You can decide who runs it, so you'll be getting the ballots in the mail. Do something about it. And I want to thank all three candidates who have joined us here tonight. Thank you very much.